Hello, Jamie from Inky&Scrappy back with a little genius stamp set series featuring cards 2 and 3, doing some custom background papers and just some center focal image placement. I will have that color palette is up on my blog at InkyandScrappy.com on the side that says Oohoo marker blends. It will be there if you are interested. I will also have a still in just a second here as I eat my ice cream and maybe a brownie. I'm not talking about it. It was delicious. Sometimes we need, some brain food, and that was my current brain food. It's it's actually protein ice cream, so it's semi-healthy, okay? Okay. So I had actually colored all of my images when I had a crafty date with my friend Miss Amy File. And so I started, and I put the card bases on, and then I decided when I got home, I wanted some custom cardstock. I just couldn't find a pattern paper that I wanted that was going to work with what my images were and what my idea was. So I grabbed some scrap pieces of paper, envelopes, whatever I had, and just kind of masked off my card base there because they were already on my card base. Could have I gone a different route and started over? Probably yes. But, I'd started with this, so I went that route. So usually when I do a custom background pattern paper, I start with my biggest image first, be that this one is the little genius, of course. I also tend to like to stamp using a block instead of my platform just because it's faster. But if you're not comfortable block stamping, go ahead and use your platform. It just takes a little bit longer because you have to either A, you're moving the paper around in your platform to kind of get it where you want it, or you're cleaning your stamp every time and removing it and then, adding it, stamping it that way. So just keep in mind it takes a little bit longer that way. I try to continue to freehand stamp just because I want to, it's a muscle memory thing, I believe, and so if you do it enough, you just kind of get the feel of it. I didn't do it for a while after I got my stamp platforms, and I felt I was losing that muscle memory, so I went back to doing a little bit more of it, and, it works. I think it works well to kind of continue that one. Now, I know where my placement for my image is going to be on this one, so I'm not totally worried about that center there, but I kind of want some images there just because I don't know exactly what's going to hang out and what's not, and I don't want it to be I want it to look like a pattern paper that's kind of, continual, so it doesn't look like it stops at the end of the card page or the images. I'm also bringing in some Oohoo glitter markers here. You can get them. So I got the email from Oohoo, and they said they're going to have to increase the prices in the U.S. So if you are on the fence about buying Oohoo markers, granted their website doesn't have a whole lot left, I will link the Amazon ones because A, it's free shipping, and B, the prices are about the same. I think they're the same because they don't currently have a special. The only thing is you don't get, the points for like turn your points into cash sort of thing. If you're doing the Amazon route. So keep that in mind. It sounds like hopefully they'll be restocking some of the re-inkers. I went to go and order re-inkers, and that's when I noticed like most everything for US shipping was out of stock. So just keep that in mind. I did find I didn't find any re-inkers on Amazon, but the sets were still on Amazon. I think the full Honolulu B set was on Amazon, and the 200 set of the Oahu, which both are really good ones. Even some of the smaller sets were also there. So if you're looking for replacements or such, I would suggest doing that before the 5th. So this one will have to obviously go up before the 5th. So I only went with the 2 colored glitter markers. I wasn't too worried about bringing in more colors. He's only got, the green, and that's about it. And then I think his tie is red. So that's why I went with those colors for this one. And then of course I'm going to bring in some Glossy Accents. I did pop him up on some foam tape just to lift him up off the card just a little bit. I'm going to bring in that Glossy Accents for his glasses there, so they have that shine and glossy glass effect. And then for the sentiment, so I kind of have been shopping my Ink Road stash for scientific style sentiments, and so I brought in, this one is the upside down, I think, which is from Stranger Things. And so some of the sentiments in here just kind of worked for where I was headed. And so I grabbed one of those, and then I'm going to stamp this on some white cardstock. I think that's what I ended up deciding doing. Just a scrap of white cardstock, and I'm going to stamp this with my VersaFine Onyx Black with my stamp platform. Would have I needed to do the stamp platform? Probably not, because I'm die cutting it, but you know, it's one of those one and done. Most of the time, VersaFine Onyx Black is one and done, so I don't feel bad about stamping on a block. But usually my stamp platform is more readily available than my blocks, because usually my blocks have stamps that I just got done using on and had to put away. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. So nobody normal ever accomplished anything meaningful in this world. So that was, you know, I was looking for, you know, something that the nod to the little genius on this one, and so that was kind of, you know, where I went. And then of course finding a die cut that was going to cut it out in, I don't know, keep that whole sentiment in there. So I did bring in the Lawn Fawn Simple Banner Sentiment dies, and then because I wasn't sure if I wanted the flag or not, I gave myself enough room, A, when I stamped it, and B, when I cut it out, so I could add a flag to the other end if I so choose. I put it on there with the flag on the one end, and I liked it better just straight and flat. You know, some things just don't require that flagged end. I also popped up my sentiment on this one, and I ended up deciding to go right underneath his feet. It kind of gives him a landing spot, so it doesn't look like he's floating on air. So it kind of gives him, you know, the illusion of ground. So for my second one, I may have, you know, forgot to start the camera. Anyways, I'm bringing in Unicorn Farts from Ink Road Stamps. I've been selectively just inking the explosion part of this one. And it's kind of, you know, it's the only explosion that I think that I have, or at least that I know that I have in my stamp sets, and so it works really well with the Science and, of course, Beaker. I probably could do some stamp surgery and just cut it apart, because there's definitely room there. But I've been doing it this way, and it's been just fine. So for this one, I'm bringing in that Onyx Black ink again, just because it stamps really well. I'm not coloring it with alcohol markers, so I'm not worried about that. And just selectively inking that explosion part. And again, starting with my largest image that I planned on using for this one. So this one I ended up, like, I was only planning to do the explosion, and I wasn't planning on doing, and then of course the meep. But I wasn't planning on doing the other part of this one until I got that far. Which, you know, sometimes we change our mind mid-create. And yes, I'm not totally on camera. I apologize. Again, just using my scrap pieces of paper to mask off my card base there to, you know, sometimes, you know, it happens. I just couldn't go with plain, I don't know. It just looked too plain for me to just add my colored image on top, which it probably would have been just fine, right? Yeah. So for my What the Meep, I'm going to go with kind of a tone-on-tone stamping for this one. And so it's lighter, it kind of blends into the background, but it's still going to stick out. I did come in with Distress Oxides, and I want to say I used Evergreen Bough, but I'm not positive. It could have been Peacock Feathers. It could have been, I mean, there's a couple of different tealy ones that it could have been. I'm not exactly sure. Now, for this one, I wanted to get the What the Meep in the middle part because it was lacking there, but I'm going over my other stamped image, right? I knew it was okay. I made sure that Beaker was going to cover it up, so it's not a huge deal, but, you know, if you know that you're going to cover something up, you can definitely, you know, stamp where maybe you don't want to stamp, because you know you're going to cover it up and nobody will be the wiser, right? Well, I mean, you will, obviously, but the person who receives it won't see that, you know, that little, maybe I didn't leave myself enough space kind of thing. Yeah. And so for this one, I brought in that Ukuku glitter marker again. This time I am using silver just to kind of add a little bit of sparkle and shine to those explosion clouds, adding in some silver sparkle to, you know, all the things on this one. I just kind of picked areas that I thought looked like maybe highlights or lowlights, or I don't know. I didn't want to do the whole cloud as that silver. I just kind of wanted to add a little bit of interest to it. Once I was happy with all the glitter and of sparkle, you know, it had equal amounts of sparkle throughout. That's what I was going for. So I'm bringing in some foam tape again for Beaker, just like I did on the little Bunsen, just to, you know, to kind of pop him up so he's not going to get squished in the mail. Does that make sense? I probably went a little extra on my foam tape for this one. Just a little bit. So I'll peel off all of the backings once I have, you know, those set. And then, of course, I will pop him on to the middle, covering up that one area that I was not, you know, I didn't stamp it quite right. It's all good. So covering that up. And then, of course, I have all of these little beakers or little test tubes that I had colored when I colored in all of the images, and then I'd cut them all out. So I was like, I wanted to add a little splash of color to this one, and this way I could add that little splash of color, and it just kind of adds a little bit to the background, kind of like the other one. I just had kind of used the glitter pen to add in a little bit of color to the background. This one I'm going to use actual stamped and colored images, stamped, cut out, and colored images, right? And so this way I can add them. Now keep in mind I only need to add parts of them here and there because they're off the page and I don't need to have the whole thing on there. So I tried to make sure that my colors were varied enough that no two colors were going to be right next to each other. And because Beaker is wearing you know, an array of colors, I could bring in more colors with this one than I did the other one. And so I like the look of this one. Of course, the red and the orange are going to stick out a little bit more because, you know, they're red and orange. But I liked the green. So I tried to do triangles with my colors on this one. So, of course, the red here, the red Beaker, and the orange, I guess, test tube, not Beaker. But so you kind of get a triangle there, and then with the green ones, you kind of get a triangle. Using the cut one and the other part of the cut one for just the ones that are going to hang off the side, because I don't need the whole thing there. And so that way I get a little bit more mileage out of those ones than maybe I would otherwise. I could have probably thrown the other part of that one up on top, but I didn't think of it until now. So maybe later I will. We'll see. So for this one, I had hemmed and hawed with stamp sets. Again, I decided to bring in a sentiment from the Stranger Things stamp set. I think it's the upside down. I'll list it down below. I'm pretty sure that's what the stamp set's called. Anyways, so I will add partial sentiment on this one because I just thought this one fit with Beaker. So I'm just selectively inking my stamp here. Mistakes have been made. I think it says like friends won't lie, or friends, I don't know. I think it says friends won't lie for the rest of it, but I just wanted the mistakes have been made part of it. So once I had that stamped out, I'm going to also stamp out the little text bubble that Inkro did that kind of has like the, you know, sweary words, but not sweary words. The symbols in there for what may have come out of Beaker's mouth, because it's still a clean card, right? Because it's what the meat, right? Yep. And so this way it kind of goes with that what the meat. I did hand cut that out. I wasn't going to run it through the Brother Scanner cut just for it's such an easy cut. Actually, I cut all of my Beaker and Bunsen ones out by hand as well. So, because I was at Miss Amy's house and not at home. So, I could have probably waited. I was planning on getting more done, but, you know, I tend to talk more than create when we have a crafty day. Yeah. Anyone else have that problem? No? Just me? Okay. All right. So, I cut that one out with an Avery Elle simple sentiment strip. I think Taylor Expression has some similar ones if you are looking for them. I don't know if Avery Elle still carries them. I couldn't find them when we were looking, and so I know Taylor Expressions still had them last fall when we were looking. So I am going to pop up this one as well, and this time I decided to go a little bit under his, nope, I did right up just like the other one. I was gonna say I thought I did a little, but you know, I didn't. I did end up just gluing my speech bubble right on to the paper, so that one's not popped up. And then of course the little test tubes aren't popped up, but they need some glossy accents because test tubes are glass, right? So I added some glossy accents to all of the test tubes here. And then for the one that's kind of covered, I just came in and did the top and the bottom, just the part that's kind of sticking out there, not worrying about the part that's underneath the sentiment. And then of course that little teeny tiny one down on the bottom. And then I decided that my, sentiment bubble up on top just kind of needed something. So I brought in the lighter colors that I used on Beaker. So that blue, that is his shirt color, and then that greenish yellow, that is his lab coat. And I just kind of added that onto my speech bubble there. So it wasn't stark white on the inside. I think it just kind of goes a little bit with the actual colored image and kind of just melds it into the card a little bit better. There's that Beaker card with, maybe a little more detailed background than my Bunsen card, but both of them kind of are super cute in their own style. I kind of enjoyed doing a stamp series again, so I have one more for sure ready to go for this one. I wasn't planning on doing a stamp series, but it kind of happened. Anyways, hope you guys have an amazing day. Keep getting inky. Bye!